Um, Nice introduction, Denise. So I'll have to brag a little bit. I know that y'all have been in this UNCP conference all morning, so you know this already, that UNC Pembroke coaches and their team is just wonderful. And we often collaborate with them because they're always willing to jump in and um, participate and work together and do things. I see a couple people in here that I know, to teachers that I work with at our UNCW lab school, is Chase Morgan and Jamie Updegraff. Hey guys. So they're going to be part of the BT panel today. I can't wait to see that. So let's take just a moment. Hi, Jamie. So let's take just a moment to know who is here. And since we don't have many people in here, if you could just tell us your name and what you teach. If you're elementary, middle, high school, and so your age level of what you teach. You want to start us off, Chase? I'm going to ask you to talk. So she just asked you to mute your mic. I'm going to ask you to unmute them.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So I'm Chase Morgan. I teach second and or third grade at DC Virgo, UNCW's lab school, and I just finished my 6th year teaching.
Awesome. Go ahead, Jamie.
You want me to jump in?
Yeah, thank you.
Jamie Updegraff. I teach health and PE at the K-8 school. So I get all of the babies at DC Virgo, and I just finished my 2nd year of teaching.
And you also do running with your students too, like a club. What would you call it?
Oh, I did. Yeah, I did Girls on the Run this past year. Chase has done Stride before too, though. So we're both into that.
Florence?
Hi, I'm Florence Fabroa, and I teach high school.
Okay, what content?
Math.
Awesome. That's one of my favorite ones for this topic then. Patricia, what about you? Are you there, Patricia?
Hello.
Hi.
I am. Hi, good morning. I am an instructional coach with the new support program in the UNCC region.
Right. Okay, so you get to see everybody all the time. I knew I recognized your name. Glad you joined us today. Gloria, what about you? We can't hear you, Gloria. Still on mute.
Good morning. I'm a 2nd grade teacher, maybe / 3rd grade. So that's going to probably be a new area for me, with Cumberland County schools.
With Cumberland County. Okay. Well, I live at Newton Grove, so we're close.
We close together.
And Danny, what about you?
Hello, I'm a social studies education student at UNCP, and I'll be going into my internship semester this fall.
Awesome.
Okay.
I'm so glad y'all all came today and chose this session. Patricia, I'm going to invite you too, and Denise too, to jump in at any time with any of the stuff that we're talking about today. And we will, so Denise is working on the chat box, so the link will be there. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Our topic today is one that I'm passionate about, is student self-monitoring. And the good news is, since we have 2nd grade to high school in here, is that this topic can really be used and applied to any age level, and honestly any content level, and it can actually even cross from academic to behavior to even Chase has used it with, in his classroom, some with self-esteem issues. Like, it goes for so many different topics. So I want to encourage you, while you're watching today, or while we're talking and interacting, to think about not necessarily the specific examples that we talk about, but how could you use this in your classroom? How can you tweak it to your purpose? Because we all teach the different things. So Denise has put into the chat box is the link so that you can get a copy of the PowerPoint, because the PowerPoint has some resources within it that we're going to look at, and then you can use later on. You will have to be logged into a Gmail account somewhere, but when you open that link, hopefully it will ask you, do you want to make a copy? And if you will say yes, it will give you your own copy of the PowerPoint so that you can keep it, and you can change it, alter it, save anything, and it won't affect anything else. So I'll give you just a minute to get that copy, and I'm going to share my screen. It's so weird. I want it to be, leave it that way. So can you let me know, have you gotten your copies of the point?
Yes, it worked.
Awesome. I always hold my breath and hope with Google, you know. I always say when I go off the edge, it's because of the Google folder. Anybody having any issues? Everybody have it now? I can't. And if you're having trouble with the link, you can also just do the tiny URL self-monitoring 7, and that should get you there also. Awesome. Thank you for letting me know. And can you see it well enough? Because I really do like to have it so that I can see your pictures all at the same time. There we go. There we go. That works perfect. So Denise talked about the norms earlier. Our target today is to just talk about what are the characteristics of student self-monitoring, what are ways that we can incorporate that, and then think about how could you use it in your classroom. So let's first of all self-assess where we're at. I know you're shocked that we might do that in this session. So think about in a number of your knowledge on students self-monitoring. When students are keeping up and monitoring, be it their academic needs or their behavior needs, what number would you be at? And how about, if you will, you can either hold your hand up or you can put it in the text box, or you can just wait and hold on to that thought and put it in the Padlet next. So 1 would be, what is self-monitoring? What are we talking about? 2, I know what you're talking about, but I don't really understand it. 3, I know a lot, but I want to know more. And 4, I could teach this class, this session today. Oh, awesome. Let's go to the next one, and let's look at the Padlet. And if you quickly, as quick as you can, you should be able to click on that link, and let's put into the Padlet what you would like to know about self-monitoring. What your level is, if you haven't shared on the video, and then what you'd like to know. That's a good one, Jamie. Notice that I named this session Empowering Students because I really feel like, and the research shows that teaching students the skill of how to monitor whatever it is, be it their grades or how they're progressing toward their reading goals, whatever it is, it empowers them. It teaches them a lifetime skill, and it empowers them to reach their goals. So let's look. We got how to help students hold themselves accountable for high quality work. Keep it going during online and remote learning, and we'll talk about that towards the end. And Jamie uses it frequently in her class, but how do we keep it going? How do we implement it? Awesome. So let me tell you a little bit about how I started in this process. So when my youngest child was in first grade, she came home and told me that she needed to do a conference with me. She said, "Mom, you need to sit down. We've got to do a conference." And she went over her reading levels with me, and she told me what her reading level was, what her goal was, and then she talked about how she was going to reach that goal. And I was just amazed that my first grader could do that. So that's kind of how I started getting interested in this topic, even though we can use it for a lot of other things too. All right, so I want to show you one example, and I know that you're probably already using some of these ideas in your classroom, and hopefully we'll have time to talk about that today. So I want to show you a couple of what does this look like video clips. And now we'll all hold our breath that everything's going to work correctly, and what it looks like at the different age levels. So this is kindergarten.
I love ya, Ashe, Ashe.
I
love ya, Ashe, Ashe. I love ya, Ashe.
My name is Trinity. I'm in kindergarten and my school is called Delaware Ridge Elementary School.
We welcome you with our words. We welcome you with our hearts.
First thing that our students do is they greet their parents or whoever is there to listen to their learning.
And we say you like a high five, handshake, or a hug. The second thing we do is our welcome song.
I love ya, Ashe, Ashe.
To get kindergartners ready for their student-led conference,
Here are two of my reading strategies.
There you go.
we just take it a little bit by little. Students will share their learning targets before they talk about each page that they are sharing.
I can demonstrate how to use picture clues when reading. It's a dragonfly,
How do you know that's a dragonfly?
because a dragonfly has these things. I can stretch outwards to hear all the sounds. Egg, g, egg, g, egg. To do a student conference, you can be in first grade, second grade, or third grade, or fourth grade, or fifth grade, or you can be in kindergarten. I can find the sum of two numbers. We put it dots to make it equal the 7. Since I taught you, may you do one? Whatever.
So, what do you think about that? First of all, let's just stop and acknowledge how cute she is. Isn't she the cutest ever? So, what do you think about, what are your thoughts when you see that? Y'all have to talk, sorry. Somebody unmute.
I did, Lori. I just think it makes it like the parents are so much more engaged in what their kid is learning too, because they love hearing from their child. So I love that because you can tell that they're really impressed and excited to hear about what she's learning when it's coming from her.
Absolutely. And then she's proud of her work. And parents want to hear from their children when their child says, "I need you to go and I need you to do this conference with me," you're increasing the chance that the parent is going to be involved. So a lot of schools do this where they have like a parent night or some type of night where parents come out and meet with the student leads it, and they've practiced in class and leads the conference. And that's one way to do it, and that's certainly a great way to increase your parent participation, because when the student is saying, "I need you to go to school, I need you to go to school," it increases the likelihood and the number of parents that come out. And there's always somebody who's going to say, but what about the kids that nobody will come to school? But there's a couple of ways you could do that. You could have the child take it home and let it do their presentation to whoever will listen, big sister, aunt, uncle, neighbor, preacher, whoever. And then another thought is to think about who else in the school could listen to it. Could it be another teacher? Could it be the custodian? Could it be the lunchroom lady? It could be anybody. To work around those. So I wanted to point out too, this child is 5 years old and she is talking about her strategies. She's talking about the process. Do you think this happened very quickly? Like, how did they get to the point where she could have this conversation?
Yes, probably close contact with the teacher, taking and teaching her strategies and showing her that, how important it is to read or to learn. So what she's probably has already done is connected that relationship with her teacher. And now she's so excited about sharing it with her parents. And her parents is like excited because she knows it. And you'll be amazed at parents when they finally see that their child learned something in school. So the teacher probably had something to do with that.
Oh, absolutely. And then Patricia put in the chat, lots of structure. Yep, lots of structure and practice. So I think that's absolutely true to point out a lot of practice, but you're also teaching that a life skill. So let's look at what it would look like at the middle school level. So this is a middle school student, and we'll just watch a couple minutes.
Ms. Perman, this is my father.
Hi, nice to meet you.
My pleasure.
That this is my portfolio. I'm gonna tell you about how well I'm doing. I just had my student-led conference with my dad. We were talking about how good I'm doing, all my LTs I'm working on, my progress, and everything I'm doing good in my classes.
Are there any that you're really proud of?
I'm really proud of explaining what context clues are because it's really simple. And I think
it is very important to have these conferences, especially to learn and to see where our students stand as far as academic is concerned. And it also helps us get involved in the education of our kids.
This is my context clues quiz. See, these are the learning targets I can define vocabulary words.
I'm Gabriella's science teacher. I'm also her crew leader. I really appreciate student-led conferences because it increases participation greatly. Our school has 100% participation in student-led conferences, which is great for every single student to be able to have a conversation with their parents.
So, notice with this, the one thing that I particularly like about this, the way they're doing their student-led conferences, it also gives you the opportunity to really start with something positive, and the student can focus on what skills they're doing well at, and then also bring into the conversation what is their goal, where they picked out their goal, and they learn the skill of how to analyze that and how to improve it. Comments on the middle school? Anybody? So let's look briefly at what would high school look like.
Okay, so while he's organizing, I'm Miss Doherty. How are you? How are you? Great. So Raphael is going to choose a couple pieces of work. He's going to talk about them and reflect on them in a way that's meaningful. Then we're going to take a look at his grades. And then we'll look at his transcript and see how he's doing with reference to graduation and credits and GPA. Etc.
Yesterday was my first 10th grade student-led conference with my mom. Basically talked about all my work that I've done so far throughout the year.
So I'm Raphael, your son, right? This is Miss Doherty, well, my former Spanish teacher. Yeah. So this is my global history piece. It was a thematic essay. They gave you documents
I'm a single mother of 3 children here at Wheels, and this is the year that I have all 3 of my kids at the same school.
And you have to use that document, the information on the document, and write an essay based on a theme, on a main theme, and the theme was economic systems.
The Student Life Conference helps us in like becoming more honest about the work because it lets us know that we have to tell the truth for our teachers to help us and at the same time our parents to see if they can find a way to help us with the teachers together.
So what are the areas where you were struggling?
Basically my body.
So what do you notice about the high school conference? Comments?
Yes, I'm looking at the video, and what I'm looking at is that the teacher allowed the student to pick out of his own out of his packet that she has collected for him, that he's able to explain what he learned. And he, like you said, you got to be honest, because if someone else wrote it or someone else did his homework or helped him do his homework, he wouldn't know the information. If the teacher don't have the correct, like being honest, saying, I don't know, I don't understand something, then she's not able to help him, and he's able to explain it to his mom. And that kind of helps out a lot when you allow students to make choices, because every day we make choices. And when we make those choices, it's a good thing that when the teacher allowed the student sometime to make choices, and you be the facilitator instead of just leading right into, you do this, you do that. And that was really nice there. I haven't taught high school, but that's a great thing I can use for my second graders. It's just I don't always impose what I want, but to be able to give them a choice at what would you like to discuss with your parents. Kind of help me out, let moms know, hey, this is where I'm struggling at. Because a lot of parents don't really know and believe that children sometimes really do struggle. They think that they're very smart. The first thing they'll say, they're very smart, but then they do still have some areas that they need some work in. So this is great.
Absolutely. And anybody else? Let's see. Denny put in student is able to communicate his needs from the teacher and the parent, and that's a skill. Like that's a lifetime skill that all students need to know, and they don't even at the high school level. They don't always have the ability to like look at their grades. Even like we send a progress report home, we'd like to think that all high school students can look at their grades and say, "Oh, well, I have 2 zeros for homework. That's why my grade is not good. I just need to get my homework done. Everything else is fine." But not all students have that skill. We have to teach them that skill of being able to look at it and analyze and say, well, this is good. This is where the improvement is made. Think about how that student had, all 3 students really had to understand the assignments to even be able to explain it to their parents. Florence put in the chat, student feels that they are supported and will be supported by telling the truth about their learning. Absolutely. I'll add to that too, that it's also a safe space so that the students can talk about what they're working on, that it should be a positive experience to say, I'm not doing as well in this area. This needs to be a goal that I'm going to work on. Any comments other about the videos, any of the 3 videos, or how you could use it in your class?
I think it's just important to see the similarities between the kindergarten, the middle, and the high school. It was the exact same process, and it showed that from 5 to 18, all students can do it. It's the exact same process. You just have to, cater it to your grade level and your content. But the kindergartner was doing the exact same thing the high school was doing, which was really good to see.
Absolutely. And then think about too, what about if they're not talking about their academic strategies? What if it's a 4th grader who's talking to their parent about some situation that they got in trouble in school with, and they've reflected on the why behind it, and then thinking about what solutions they could come up with when you're having that parent conference to talk with the parent about whatever is going phone. John won't stay and is getting out of his desk too many times during the day, and then having the student to reflect and talk about why, and then the goal, and making a path to reach that goal. So it doesn't have to be academics necessarily. I'm going to switch back to my presentation. So if we go down to the next slide, I left this slide in because these are articles, and that is like the research behind. There's so much research behind student choice, student voice, teaching them the skill to be able to analyze where they're at, to create a goal, to create a path to that goal, to be able to stop and reflect on along the way, where are they at on that goal. So I left these in. We're not going to talk about it now, but if you'd like to learn more, these are easy to read, simple articles with templates that I like. So I left those in. Okay, the next slide is really what I want to get to. So in my mind, I divide self-monitoring. I divided it into 5 categories, though you could really use it for so many more things. I used data reflection, student behavior, learning target reflection, student-led conferencing, and then rubrics. But there's really so many other ways to use this. But if you click on this link and self-monitoring examples, I'm sorry, what? Oh, it's in this chat box. Thank you, Denise. So if you click on that link, it should take you to folders that are student behavior management. You should be able to access it. You should be able to download it. And this is just a collection of, over time, because I'm in and out of a lot of wonderful, wonderful classrooms, and I see so many good things over time. So each folder has an elementary, a middle school, and a high school example. I still encourage you, when you're looking at these, to think about how you could adjust it to your purpose, to your students, to your school, to your content that you teach. So I want to give you, let's see what time it is, maybe about 7 or 8 minutes to take a few minutes to look through and just look at the examples of how it might be used. And some of these are a snapshot of something I saw in a classroom that a teacher was using it, and I thought it was great, and I added that in. Just to take a few minutes to look through that, and then we'll come back together and talk about what you've seen, and if you've seen anything that you could adjust and use in your classroom. Any questions? So let's take about 7 or 8 minutes to just give you a minute to go through and look. We'll stop, let's just say, we'll stop at 11:07. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask or talk about anything. We'll stop at 11:07.
Lori, are you okay if I tweet you out?
Absolutely.
I'm gonna take a pic of you.
Oh, okay. Great. We'll take about 3 more minutes to finish looking, unless you're finished early. If you get finished, let me know. Put a message in the chat box if you're finished. And we'll stop in 1 minute if everybody's at a good stopping point. Okay, it's 11:07. Is everybody at a point that they can come back and we can chat about what you saw and anything you could use? Comments? Did you see anything that you haven't done before or haven't seen before or might could use or thought was interesting and maybe triggered you to think of something else you could use it with?
I really like the in the data folder, the student assessment reflection template by Uncommon Schools. So, I do the standard based report cards where I break it down based off the standard and give the scores and things like that. But what I liked about this form is it does that same process, but then it also gives a form for the child to reflect on it as well. So, why did I, not get the multiplication question right? Is it because I didn't know how to do it, or is it because I rushed? And I think allowing that reflection piece inside the assessment tool is an added benefit that I hadn't really thought about, maybe conversations that I had with students, but allowing each student to have that reflection part of the assessment, I think is a really interesting add-on to it.
Well, you mentioned about math, because I think it was Flora, somebody said they taught, Florence said she taught high school math. One of my favorite uses of this is where you have students reflect on the math that they did. Did they, the problems that they got wrong, did they get it wrong because they didn't understand how to do the problem, or because they had just had an error in calculation, so that they know which way to study or prepare for the future? That's a good point. Somebody else? Did you see anything you thought was interesting or new or you might could use?
Yes, I like the rubrics. The rubrics are really good because that give me a good little guideline of what I need to be looking at, and give me specific, different, like in the writing skills, especially because when students, just like the lady was saying this morning, when you put in for a question and sometimes they don't give you the whole answer, but the rubric give you what, if they didn't say this or they didn't do this, this is how many points they get. So the rubric is very important too, of how to take and be able to grade them, especially with the remote learning probably that's going to be going on. That's going to be a big thing
And it really makes it easier
to
to use
grade them.
it. And it also helps the students to know, once they learn to use rubrics, now you'll have to most likely, no matter what age they are, possibly teach them to use it, but it helps them to know what to do also. Anybody else? So, did you see anything, Florence?
Also like the student assessment reflection template, and I'm planning to even use it in a like solving word problems. You know, when you ask students like which part you did not understand, they just seem to say like everything, or they could not like be able to specify like which specific part they did not understand. So with this template, it seems like you would be able to see which part they really didn't understand in a certain topic. So I'm planning to use that.
I love that high school math. Now, I will say that one, that might not, like, it might be too much to start with, that you might want to make your own, and make it maybe as extensive to start out with when you're teaching them to do it. But I feel like that they can just benefit so much from even recognizing for themselves what they need to work on. Do they need to work on slowing down during the test, or making sure they keyed in the calculator right, or do they just totally don't understand the concept?
And I think that'll help lead to, for the teacher as well, when it comes to like reviewing, and reassessment, you will have, you might have then two different groups that you could pull, and you can work on those two specific skills with one part of your review group. With this group, I need to focus on actually reteaching the content because they didn't understand it. Whereas this group, they already know it, so I'm going to teach them the skills of slowing down, or teach the skill of checking your work, or whatever tiny mistake they made, I can hone in on that component and teach the process of fixing careless errors. Whereas with the other group, I need to do reteaching of the strategy, which I think would be really beneficial to the math teacher as well.
Absolutely. And honestly, when you get to the point, we all want to not talk about test scores, but that's a reality that we all have to deal with. And when you start thinking about what can I really do to increase test scores so that their learning is reflected on the test scores, that's really what it takes. When you get to the point that you can get to small groups of, this is exactly what this student needs and exactly what this a group needs, that's when your test scores really go up and skyrocket. Good point. Anybody else? Something else you saw that you liked, or you might could use the idea? I'm exercising wait time. Another use of this that I don't have it in this in my PowerPoint that I have seen is even a high school chorus teacher. He would have his students, he would record them singing, and then they would analyze as a group and individually all the different components that that he taught in his class. So it really can be used at any content level. And I also love it for the student behavior I have seen it work with the student behavior because it's having the student to think through what was the problem, why did they have a problem, and then what could they do as an alternative. And I've seen this work sometimes when I didn't think it would. One time I was filling in for a 10th grade math 2 class, and a student did something that was a problem, and he was 18 and still in math 2. And he was upset, so I had him answer some questions, what happened, why did it happen, and what could you have done instead. And that gave him some time to cool off. And then I was doing other things. And then at the end of class, when we had our private conversation about it, he really didn't know. And he was like, oh, so if I'd have just done, and he explained it, and it really worked. And not only did it not go any further to be an office referral, it actually allowed me to build my relationship with that student, and we strengthened it and moved forward. So it turned out to be a positive experience. So I think it's very powerful for behavior, student behavior also. So let's look, we only have a few more minutes. So if we go down the slides, the next slide is for exceptional children, and thinking about how student self-monitoring fits into using it with exceptional children. And this example I snapped in a classroom. This was a K3 classroom, self-contained classroom. This particular child had a person that, like an assistant, with her at all times. And on her desk, she has her name, and she has this strip across the top, and it's little Velcro pieces. And this is her activities for the day. And when she completes an activity that she is supposed to do, she would drop that little square into the little pink bucket onto the side of her desk. And there's so much research behind, the checklist, or in this case, moving the little piece of paper over. And then over here on the yellow card is what she was working for. And I know you can't see it in this picture, but she was working for time on her iPad to play her games. So she also would get the dots here are for rewards. So I just wanted you to see that this particular child, I believe she was a first grader, but she was functioning on like a 5 or 6 year old level and was able to do that. That's a great example of her being able to monitor her schedule. Another thought for exceptional children is thinking about having conversations with that student and having them reflect on what accommodations do they need / want to use. Like particularly at the middle school and the high school level, they can choose whether they get separate room or extra time. Sometimes, like on the exams, they can choose if they want it or not. Having them to be able to analyze what they need and is it useful, and even being a part of the IEP meetings. I mean, that's the ultimate goal as they get older, for them to be involved. Comments about exceptional children? And the next slides are just some resources. Student-led conferencing, just some articles that also have good templates on it. One for rubrics, one for student management, just additional resources for you to use. We've got just a couple of minutes left. So ideas or conversation, I'd really like to hear from you on what you could use this for, or what has it triggered you to think of another way that you could use it. Y'all are so quiet. Okay, so let me ask you this way. Give me a thumbs up or put it in the chat. Have you seen anything today that maybe, even if you use it, that you haven't seen before, or triggered you to think of it in a new way? Awesome. So let's go back, and we've got to self-assess. We can't finish without self-assessing. So think about your knowledge when you came in, whatever number you were at. Did you grow any while we were going through this? And I know that in 40 minutes you're not going to learn everything, but my goal is if it triggers you to think of oh, well, I might could use it a different way or in my classroom.
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest thing that I'm taking from this one, not, there's so many different resources that you're giving us, but also, um, you know, and it's where I love like data tracking and I love keeping specific data goals for students and doing things like that. But the stuff you showed is like giving another layer to it with bringing the student in more, and so I like the additional component that this brings to the data tracking and allowing more autonomy for the student in doing it, which is really great.
And we have witnessed a 5-year-old do it. The 5-year-old kindergarten student, she could do it. So we know it can be done. So the last thing, so there's a lot of resources here and that I've really spent time looking at. I hope you can use those. If you have, well, maybe I will. You think about how will what you've learned, if you've learned anything that might that you can use in your teaching, tweet your answer. I'm at Lori D. Best, and it begins with teachers is a UNCW one, and the UNC Pembroke Twitter information is on the last slide. The link to the main room is on the next to last slide. And I want to really thank you and appreciate you being willing to talk and chat. And it's just so hard for me not to hear from everybody. So I appreciate you being willing to turn your videos on and put in the chat box. My email is on the first slide. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. And some of those resources are PDF files, but you can just type in online a free PDF converter and convert it to Word so you can edit it.
Lori, thank you so much. And I put in the chat box, I put the link to the main room if you just want to click on that. In between, if you've got some downtime, please go tweet out something. I feel like that's all I'm saying. Tweet. Go tweet.
Thank you, Florence, for coming, and thank everybody for coming and being willing to talk. Reach out if you have questions.
This was awesome, Lori. You've got me thinking about coaching. How can I coach this differently and look at this differently? So that's awesome. It was awesome sitting in on the session. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. I love this topic.
See you guys in the main room.
All right. Bye.